What's up? I'm taking a break right now from watching The Passion of the Christ. This is the second break I've taken. The first break I took, I just did a rabbit hole about how in Oklahoma they were treating ulcerative colitis with lobotomies. I'm kind of into reading about lobotomies at the moment. And then I started reading about Freud and how that science was based off of some of his theories and stuff like that. And I don't know. Life is just really interesting. And Freud made some mistakes for sure. Didn't get everything right. But he did have some kind of on point thoughts on things. Like, to me, his instinct was telling him that health is holistic and involving mind and body, and he was trying to connect some dots. And then people just extract things that demonize him, and then they can't get the gist of what he's saying. And that just seems to be how things operate in the world that we live in right now. And that kind of seems to be a theme as of recent. And so watching The Passion of the Christ, it's just so fascinating. The violence gets a bit much. That's why I have to take breaks. I don't know if I'm even going to finish it, but I do love this movie. I don't always finish it. But I feel like I'm also like that with some of other Mel Gibson's films, like Braveheart. I like the first half, and then I don't really ever watch the second half. I just watch the first half of the movie and pretend like it ends. And then I kind of fill in the blanks in my head of what happened. But, these are all the nature of politics. Braveheart and The Passion of the Christ are just great examples of how evil politics actually is. And you should always distrust politicians, always, and lawyers. And, pretty much everybody now, because that just kind of has polluted the whole system. Anyway, so, The Passion of the Christ. This is my second break, and I haven't really thought this out or anything like that, but I just thought, what the heck, I'll just make a YouTube video really quick about The Passion of the Christ. So I really love this movie. The acting is from beginning to end. And there's so many, especially the beginning of it, I just love so much. There's so many really beautifully captured human experiences in this movie. For example, the way Satan is depicted as a female. I think Satan is a male, but I think a woman played Satan, and even though there is a kind of right in the middle of puberty type voice of Satan, Satan is supposed to be male. There's only female qualities, and at one point Satan is actually breastfeeding a demon, and I think that just makes so much sense, because if you're gonna take on the most powerful thing in the universe, God, you're not going to go pound for pound. You're going to use more female strategies like manipulation and softness and subtleness and gossip and smears and lies and negativity. So that's how Satan is depicted. And I just think it's done in such a really artistic way, passive and soft. You don't get from Satan that he's a thug. It's Satan seems like a nurse at a hospital. That's how Satan seems. And I think that the story of Judas is very compelling, because I think you can put yourself in his shoes, and making a huge error a moral error like he does, and then just your conscience ends up killing you. And then I also think the story of Peter, his anguish at realizing his own weakness at the same time, while also recognizing that he fulfilled a prophecy and his prophecy was his weakness. I mean, that's another huge human emotion, I think. And then there's such a strong female presence in this movie. For one thing, Satan. But second, I mean, Mary, of course, and Mary of Magdalene, I think her name is. And then Claudia, Pontius Pilate's wife, who was not a Christian, did not know who Jesus was, and she had a dream that her husband, Pontius Pilate, shouldn't kill this man. So, you know, there's the females in this story, even though Satan is depicted as female, as far as I'm concerned. He's a male-female. The other female characters in this movie are very compelling and kind of magical. So that's really interesting. I mean, to think that Mel Gibson hates women, and this movie is just like to me, such a good balance of just human weakness. To me, it's not gendered. Like everyone shows weaknesses in this movie. I mean, Pontius Pilate, okay, who, to me, it's like funny in my brain to compare like how my idealistic version of President Putin. So if he were in Pontius Pilate's position, because Pontius Pilate is he's trying to make sense out of this retarded democratic world he lives in, where everybody hates each other, and these Sanhedrin folk, okay? So people say this movie's anti-Semitic, and I gotta admit, the elders of the Sanhedrin, it's not a great look, and the story in the Bible where Jesus, he's not necessarily, I mean, I guess he does get a little aggro, but essentially he's just not purely talking shit. I mean, he's healing people, he's going around, he's actually selling people on, hey, like, we got a better option than this, and these guys are like tax collectors, and they don't actually care about you or your relationship to this planet or this relationship with God. They are pretending like they care, but they don't actually care at all. They just want power, okay? So he's kind of like letting that message kind of slip in, and so then these guys are like, we got to take this guy out. And so they break their own rules that they would punish anybody else for. Kind of makes you think of some certain things in your mind. They break their own rules and have Jesus arrested on a day that they're not supposed to have people arrested, because that's a holy day. And they have him taken to, I mean, you could kind of maybe even say it was like a different nation, although it was all in the same region, but take it to a completely different culture to have him prosecuted, so the higher state would actually punish this, so they could, in their mind, be not breaking the Sabbath, but they still were breaking the Sabbath. And anyway, they're just complete hypocrites. So it's not a great look on the Jews. The story isn't, because basically Pontius Pilate is not Jewish. He was a Roman, I think. But then the Jews were just kind of like this people that they kind of managed, and so, of course, that never works. Everyone's just kind of like, no one's living cohesively. These tribes stick together and then balkanize. And, this story is as old as history. So, yeah, I guess people say it's anti-Semitic. I don't view it that way, because I feel like in this story, there's good Jews and bad Jews. And there's good female influence and bad female influence. And the same with men. Like, I also find it interesting that, for one thing, King Herod, he seems just like a liberal faggot type. And although he doesn't sentence Jesus to death, he also doesn't save Jesus. And everyone around him, and for one thing, he looks like he's a liberal. And then everyone around him is like totally debaucherous. So, like I find that also just being like another like examination of the soul of humanity as a whole. And then I think Mel Gibson's really good at this, like analyzing situations. And then okay, so the King Herod. Oh yeah, and then the executioners. So this would be like the lower class Roman types that they, just I don't know. They'd probably be like front line army guys, the executioners. Okay, they were just completely wasted while they were doing it, which you would have to be to do that job. So I just think little details like that in this movie is just really good, and I think the acting is really, really good, and it's just the violence gets a little bit too much. It does, and I wouldn't say, I would say, watching this objectively, like if I were an alien from outer space watching this movie, to me, I wouldn't take away Jews are bad, but I would take away that democracy has issues. It definitely has issues. And, you look at Pontius Pilate, and he didn't have the balls to be like, I don't fucking care what you guys think. We're not executing this guy. I mean, he gave them so many opportunities to step over their own feet, like having them choose a murderer to save over Jesus and those kinds of things. I just feel like someone like Putin would be like, oh, you guys want to kill this guy? Well, you're all terrorists, so bye-bye. You guys can leave or I'm going to kill you. And I think that ultimately, people don't want to imagine that sometimes life really does boil down to that. You can be idealistic all you want, but that won't change reality. And the reality is might oversedes right sometimes. All the time, actually. Actually, 100% of the time. So, it's like you have to consider that into your moral lens when you're thinking about how do we operate things in the most moral way. And I think if people actually took an honest look at democracy, they would see that it's actually impossible to create to create. I think democracy kills creativity, actually. And I will say, I think if the Passion of the Christ is derogatory to any group of people, it would be Muslims. Because at least you can fucking make movies where Jews are the bad guys, like Mel Gibson did. It was hard to do, but Muslims could never create like a Jesus-type movie about Muhammad. Because, for one thing, it's against their religion. So like, kind of like in the movie Fight Club, okay, number 1 rule of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. Number 2 rule about Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. There's an emphasis on that. That is not the same energy as you can't make fun of our guy or else. I mean, that's such a cowardly approach to things. Like, that's such a, to me, I mean, I know, Andrew Tate's just like, no, these guys are actually really, these are the manly religion. This is the manly religion, is Islam, where you can't even fucking draw a picture of Muhammad. So you can't even make a fucking beautiful movie like The Passion of the Christ about Muhammad. I dare somebody to make a movie like The Passion of the Christ about Muhammad. I mean, what's stopping you? You love him so much. You don't want anyone to make fun of him, so no one can draw a picture of him. So make a movie honoring him. And they couldn't do it because it would be too disturbing because he married a 9-year-old, And so, I mean, to me, that's just the ultimate, Sanhedrin shit. To me, that is the ultimate Jewish move, is you can't even draw a picture of this guy, or you're out. that is just like the ultimate faggot religion, in my opinion. So yeah, The Passion of the Christ, my ultimate review is, it gets 5 stars, and it's not anti-Semitic. It's actually anti-Muslim. Who knew? I just figured that out tonight. Happy Easter, y'all.